In this Marvel's Midnight Suns hero video, we're going to be taking a look at Ghost Rider. He is one of the first damage dealer characters you'll gain in the game. And I want to go through his cards, his abilities, his mechanics, and kind of show you guys how I play Ghost Rider and what's worked really well for me so far. So let's go ahead and jump into Ghost Rider's cards really quick, because I want to explain the mechanics of him as we go through these cards. It'll make more sense. First up is Judgment. This is a heroic card that costs 1 heroism. And essentially what it does is it consumes 25% of Ghost Rider's current health, not his max health, so whatever his current health is, to deal 2 damage to all the things around his target and his target for that amount of damage, and then when you upgrade it, it changes it to nearby enemies, protecting your teammates. At first glance, this might seem kind of bad. That's a lot of his max health, and if he's already taken damage, then he's going to lose other health, and other abilities like Lash are going to deal damage to him when they use them too, so they're kind of in conflict with this card. But I kind of want to explain the passive ability Soul Collector here, because what Soul Collector does is when you gain 4 souls, his max health increases, and you gain this health too. So it's not just a max health increase, it's also a health increase because you're gaining that health. It's not just raising the ceiling. And what that's going to do is the more you do that, the more damage potential this ability has, because his health can get higher and higher. And it also makes him taking damage not as big of a deal because he has a high health pool. You can get one of the highest health pools in the game, if not the highest health pool, via this passive ability. And the way you gain souls is by killing enemies. Every enemy that he kills, he gains 1 soul, so he needs to get up to 4, so you'd have to kill 4 enemies, or by using cards that say that they give you souls on them. So you can use those cards. We don't use them in this deck, and I'll explain why that is in a minute. But those are the 2 ways you can gain souls, and you can keep doing this over and over to keep cranking up his health, which will keep pumping the damage of this and keep raising his health pool. So knowing these things, you always want to use Judgment when you're at max HP or as close to max HP as you can, because that's going to give it the most damage. So this is a really good lead-off ability. Walk up to enemies at the beginning of a battle when you're at full health, AoE a crapload of them, kill a bunch of them, damage a whole bunch of them, soften them up for quick attacks to clean them up, whatever. This is kind of like your lead-off in a lot of cases. The next card I want to take a look at is another heroic card called Hell's Fury. It costs 1 heroism as well. Very high damage single target attack, and what it does is as Ghost Rider gets hit, every time he takes damage from an enemy or he takes damage from one of his own abilities, this damage or this card gets increased damage every time that happens. So this is a card you want to get in your hand early on and sort of use other abilities and build up your damage. Maybe use it round 2 after you've been hit by a few enemies, after you've used a couple of attacks, and this ability starts to hit like an absolute freight train at that point. So if you start off with Judgment, for instance, you're going to damage yourself. If you have Hell's Fury in your hand, it's going to increase the damage of that. So there's some synergy there. And there's synergy there with Lash as well, is because that ability damages you. So as it damages you, you're going to gain damage with Hell's Fury. So this kind of snowballs together here. Lead off with Judgment when your health's full, then play something like Lash, then play something like Hell's Fury, or wait until the next round if you've been hit by a couple enemies, and then play Hell's Fury. In my opinion, you definitely want to modify Hell's Fury with something that increases the damage. I like the one that has target not at full health increases damage. You can add, whatever offensive one you want. But this works really well because if you lead off with Judgment, everything's weakened, and then you clean it up with Hell's Fury, particularly enemies that have like a block, a good amount of block. Judgment will rip off that block and some health, and then this Hell's Fury will usually rip off their 500, 600 health bar. So this is a really good cleanup skill if you put it that way, but you can put any damaging ability modifier on it that you can get. So the next card here we're going to take a look at is Lash. This is a quick attack that gives you 1 heroism, and it does forceful knockback in any direction, which is amazing, which means he can throw anything, whether he's lined up or not. He doesn't really need to move, and it deals damage to him, which is good and bad. Obviously, it's bad for Judgment, but it's good if you're trying to build up Hell's Fury damage. So there is some synergy here as well. It's definitely, thought about put into this build, and it can wipe out like a really difficult enemy early on because of the forceful knockback, and especially if you add something like if target's at full health, throw it into an exploding barrel right away at the beginning, get that extra 100 damage, get the forceful damage, get the explosion damage, kill a tough enemy, 1 hit, gone from the board, and that's a really good way to start, and you get that card play back too because it's quick. So this synergizes really well in this build, and it's definitely one I would recommend having at least 1 or 2 of. The next card we have in our deck here is Hellmouth. Really what we're using Hellmouth for is in order to give us strengthened and to draw a Ghost Rider card and to give us the heroism. We don't really need the drop. The drop's nice, like you can knock things into it, but it's kind of RNG based, so it's not something that's super important. But getting that heroism, getting strengthened is really good, and getting a Ghost Rider card so that you can play one of these other strong cards is great. Strengthen increases your damage by 50%. So if you play Hellmouth, increase your damage by 50%, walk up with Judgment, you're going to absolutely massacre everything. And then if you finish with something like Lash and then Hell's Fury, it's over. Like, you can clear the battlefield, or at least the hardest hitting targets, which are the dangerous ones, very, very quickly, giving you an opening to do objectives or other things while the little minions are still alive, but really don't gonna do anything to you. And the last card I have here is Straight to Hell. This is a card that gives you 2 heroism if you use it, and replaces Ghost Rider with a drop until end of turn, and this is his last action, so he cannot do any more actions on a turn once you use this card. But what's really great is if you walk up, use Judgment, use a couple of Lashes or something, use Hell's Fury, he's going to be weak. You can drop Straight to Hell, and he won't be able to take damage on the enemy's turn. In fact, anything targeting him won't be able to do anything at all. So it's a great way to just disappear, and if you upgrade this, then he'll also recover health. So when he comes out of it next round, he's in a much, much better shape. So it's a really good card to have. And what I've done with it also is I've modified it to recover health if you redraw it. Because a lot of times, you don't want to spend a card play to disappear from the map and effectively give you some heroism, and that's the end. Like, that's not always a great play. But if you redraw it, he'll still gain health, and you won't have to use a card play. So kind of allows you a little bit of flexibility. Do you redraw it and gain some health with him? If he's taken some hits, like if you use Judgment and you could just redraw it real quick to gain his health back up. Or do you actually have time to use it and disappear him from the board? Or if you use a redraw, he's going to die anyway from some major attack, so maybe you use Straight to Hell. It gives you some flexibility there, and it gives you a way to heal him with his own cards. Taking a look at some of the cards that didn't make it in, first is Drain Soul. I really wanted to put this in this deck, but you're only allowed 4 heroic cards, and I wanted to put it in the place of Straight to Hell because it could serve the same function, essentially, but allow you to get damaging attacks that heal you instead of just healing yourself. Or if you set it up with a modifier, you could discard it for healing. So it would give you the same flexibility, but with an attack option, which would be better, that just builds up and gets stronger and stronger. But because you're only allowed 2 or 4 heroic cards in here, we couldn't put it in. I do want to mention, though, that every time you build up 4 souls, meaning that you get 4 kills or you use abilities that give you souls and a combination of kills, you'll draw one of these cards. It won't be all improved or have any modifiers or anything, but you'll keep drawing these as that happens. So this would work really well with that, because each one of those is going to get more and more powerful as your chains increase from casting this thing. But because there's only 4 heroic slots, we can't really do it. Unless you pull out a Hell's Fury and a Judgment, you can put in a couple of these, or pull out one of these and put this in, you could do that. Retribution also didn't make it in here, and it's a shame because it's a really good attack that also gives you 2 souls, meaning you're going to get that health buff faster. But it makes you discard a card at random, and I'm not a big fan of RNG. I try and eliminate RNG when I can in these games. And the fact that it could discard something potentially great is a huge, huge negative in my opinion. So I don't recommend putting it in, but you can if you want. Talking about what characters work very well with Ghost Rider, the first I would recommend is Nico, because she can potentially give him Strengthen. She can also give him Blood Magic, which allows him to heal himself with attacks, which was perfect for this because he needs to heal somehow. She can also heal him with her spells, which is great. And also, she can also help draw some of his cards or copy his cards. So she's a really good pairing for him, in my opinion. And you definitely want to bring her along if you're taking Ghost Rider. The Hunter is also a good choice because of the healing spells available to him, so you can heal with them. I don't like healing spells outright that just heal. That's why I like Nico, because hers attacks and heals at the same time, so you kind of get both. But you can use him early on when you don't have your deck set up perfectly in order to get him heals. Doctor Strange is also not a terrible choice here. It's definitely good early on in order to buff Ghost Rider damage. I think once you have Nico, though, Nico's a better option if you're going to have that one support role. I'd fill it with Nico over Doctor Strange. But if you don't have Nico optimized, she's not that great. Like, you really have to optimize her to get her to be really effective. And Doctor Strange is probably a little bit better by default, like before you do anything with his abilities. So he might be a better choice early on, but you should definitely swap to Nico later on. And one last tip before I wrap up this video. Again, Ghost Rider gains souls when he kills anything anyhow. So if you're going to kill things on the environment with like environmental objects, make sure Ghost Rider's the one doing it, so he gets credit for those kills and builds up that health. That wraps up our Ghost Rider video. I hope you found this helpful. He's a little bit more of a complicated character than some of the others, trying to figure out how to use his skills effectively. This is how I found them to work really, really well together, and I hope that helps you out. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try and answer them. And if you have tips for other players, and I forgot something, leave them as well so you can help other players out.